Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So after last week's crazy behind the scenes video, I thought today we would simplify things a little bit and maybe talk about one lighting modifier. And this idea came to me because I've been seeing some behind the scenes pictures that people have been putting up on their social media pages, which I think is great because it's really cool that other photographers will share their setups, their lighting setups for other photographers to see. And then along with their behind the scenes pictures, they'll show the resulting image. And it's a great learning resource for other photographers that are looking to kind of advance their skill set. But there's one thing that I've kind of picked up on a couple that I've seen here recently, and it's the use of a reflector and how it's used as a rim light. And as you know, for me, I've got what I call edge lights, which are lights that would be kind of to the edges of my subject. Makes sense, pretty literal. And then rim lights, what I would call something that would be kind of back here at maybe a 45-degree angle or so to my subject. And I've seen some people using these as rim lights, which is perfectly fine. I do it as well. But I just noticed the placement of them and the resulting effect of where they are placed, what power they have them set at, and then the angle that they're rotated in relation to the subject. So let's take a look at all three of those aspects of using this modifier and as a rim light after we roll that intro. So first, let's just start by looking at the modifier. And it's basically a metal kind of bowl that you put on the front of your strobe. And what this does, this is a Profoto model because I use mainly Profotos, but every lighting company is gonna have a modifier, or you can get third-party modifiers for your lights. But what this does is basically, when you fire your strobe with this reflective material in here, it amplifies your strobe and then kind of fires out a beam of light toward wherever you have this aimed. And you've got some control over this by sliding it back. This will make the light beam wider, and then you can tighten that beam or focus it more by sliding the reflector a little bit further down on the strobe. And that's basically it. I mean, there's no diffusion here. You can get grids to kind of dial in, direct the light more. Sometimes prevent lens flare, and we'll get to other ways you can do that as we walk and talk through what we're going to do today. But I just want to kind of talk through this because sometimes people just kind of disregard this because depending on the light, you will get this like these right here. You'll get these with the lights, and I think some people just kind of discard them because if it came with it, it must be something cheap. And relatively, they are kind of cheap depending on the brand, or inexpensive, I should say, but they are not cheap in purpose. So that is basically, that's it for this modifier. It is extremely powerful. And I tell you what, while we have it here, we'll just go ahead and jump into the power setting. So when you put this on here, it's gonna bounce around that light like we mentioned without diffusion. So I rarely take my strobes over 50% power when I'm using these as rim lights. I'm very careful about the highlight that I'm putting on my subjects. And if you take that highlight too far, you're gonna lose that information, and it's just gonna be white in your image file, even in raw images. So what I like to do is control it by keeping it in that kind of mid level where I'm still getting that look, but then I'm not losing that information in the file. I can always dial it back, but I can always punch up the contrast, punch up the highlights in post if that's what I'm going after for my final look. But if you take it too far on set, there's really no road to recovery from that. So that's the first thing, is the power. Watch those highlights that you get out of these. It's really easy to blow them out using this modifier. Placement. Now we're going to use this guy. And this is a constant light, but I think for the purposes here today, this would just be a good way to demonstrate what I'm talking about in a live sense on video. Unfortunately, I'm the only one here, so I've got to be the model, and viewership's probably going off a cliff right about now. So let me just discuss where this light is now, and you can see it. Excuse me, I got to look at my monitor, but you can see basically, and this is kind of what's brought me here to this video. I've seen some people place this modifier, and it looks like they've just opened the light stand, placed the light stand, put the light on top of it, and directed it straight at their subject. That's basically what I've done here. I've angled it back slightly, just a little bit, but what I've seen in some of these behind the scenes images is exactly what I'm showing right here. So let's demonstrate what that does. Let me turn it on with the remote, get blinded, yep. All right, so obviously it'll only go so low, and for the camera settings here, this is gonna be a little bit hot from what I would usually use this for. I mean, if I was shooting or using this as a strobe, it would be dialed way down from where it is right now. So actually, I'm gonna slide over a little bit. But you can see what I'm talking about right here is this shadow that cuts across the neck area. And to me, that is super distracting. And this time of year, we'll see a lot of football pictures, which make this even worse, because with football players, you've got their shoulder pads, and so they can have their shoulder pads up here, and so now you've got this line running, and sometimes I've seen it going across the chin, and in my case, it could be second chin, unfortunately. But so this is what I like to avoid right here. So how do we avoid that? We move the light, and the easiest way to avoid that is to take the light up. And that also gives us kind of a motivation, at least for me, a motivation for this light. Let me turn this off and then we'll move it. But let me talk about the motivation for, at least for, in my case, for using rim lights. And that is, and with sports images in particular, is to me that represents like what a stadium light might be, and how, or what a stadium light might be doing to my subject, the players, athletes. And they are coming from a higher angle. And so I like to use my rim lights as a representation of that. So let's take it up a little bit. All right, so now we've got the light. I haven't changed the angle at all on the light. I've just taken it up. And let's turn this on. So this is just slightly above my head. I'm gonna watch the monitor and see what it looks like. Okay, so we've brought that shadow down somewhat. So you can still kind of see it, right in there. It's still kind of there. It's obviously kind of super hot. It's on the side of my face. Another rule of thumb using these rim lights, when I'm using them in a fairly controlled environment, is watching the side of the nose. And I like to place them back, so we're losing that, and we'll work on that as well. But I can still see the shadow, so I know we need to go up a little bit more. So let me turn this off again so I should have put on sunglasses for this. I'm trying to keep it in frame here, and I do have another camera angle that maybe we'll have to bounce to if we need to. But so I've raised it yet again, and I've kept the angle the same. So let's see what this looks like now. All right, much better. All right, so you can see shadow is virtually gone, and we started kind of up in this area, and now it's down in here. So, really that is, it looks pretty good in that aspect. Now the issue we're having where the light is now is that it's still a little too frontal, I would say, or a little to the edge. It's kind of creeping in on the edge. So what we now need to do is probably take it up just a little bit more and then work on the angle of the light. And when I mean angle, is what I like to do is angle it down toward my subject and then rotate it away from the camera lens. And so what that does is that allows us to work the edge of this reflector, which is kind of like when you use a box or any other modifier, and you work the edge of that modifier, which means you're feathering the light on your subject. Now I know this is meant to be a harsh light, but it still doesn't mean that you shouldn't feather it in some cases, which I like to do. So let's do that. Turn this off one more time and see if we can get this thing right this time. All right, so let's turn this back on. There we go. So now what I've done is I've taken it up a little bit further. It's probably 2 feet above my head. And I've moved it back. You can see the stand where it is now. And then I've angled it down and rotated it away from me in this case. And I'm gonna slide over. So now I'm working what is now what would be an edge light. And another benefit of taking that light up and placing it in this type of way is when you feather it away from your lens, you don't have to use a grid to protect yourself from flare. And this gives you coverage, so if you need to photograph your subjects from head to toe, this gives you pretty good coverage from head to toe based on your angle, your tilt, down toward your subject and the distance away. I'm getting it basically focused back here. And then we're also picking up a hair light. So we're working in edge and a hair light kind of at the same time. So if I had another one on this side, I would be getting some pretty good separation from my background by just using the placement like this on this edge light. So 3 quick things with this little edge light lesson. You've got power that we talked about, you've got placement, and then you've got the angle of the light. So power, for me, is usually around 50% or so. Placement is probably 2 feet above my subject. And then the angle, first I move the light back, so that's part of placement, I guess. Move it back a little bit, and then angle it down toward my subject. So power, placement, and angle. You work those 3 aspects and you get this nice edge/hair light. And if you're working 2 of them, you get it on both sides of your subject. Now, to take it a little bit further, I usually add a couple more lights on the edge of my subjects, and that kind of different modifiers will help accentuate what I have going on here with this edge over here. So that might be a lesson for another day. But anyway, if you've got any comments, questions, please feel free to drop those down below. If you found this video worthy, give it that thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so YouTube will let you know when I'm here. In the meantime, you can find me on social media at QuantsPhoto on Instagram and Twitter. Y'all please stay safe and healthy out there, and hope to be here again soon with a good rim light in the future.